Alright. I need to vent. Alright. I'm trying to upgrade from my 6-year-old Dell laptop to a custom-built desktop that can last me potentially another 6 years, maybe even a decade. I'm not looking for top-of-the-line, just higher-end stuff than what I got 6 years ago with room to upgrade again in the future. I'm planning on doing a healthy mix of gaming, game development, music production, and making videos. Specifically longer videos like the AVGN retrospective I've been working on. And so, for the past several months, I've been researching and eventually buying PC parts with plans to build my own PC when I have everything ready. Unfortunately, it seems I picked a terrible time to buy parts as nearly every aspect of the market sucks right now and seems purposely set up to be as confusing as possible. And as someone who's been trying to decipher it all for months, I've been growing kind of frustrated with the way PC parts are going, especially CPUs and by extension motherboards, but we'll get to that. And I need to get everything off my chest the only way I know how. If things in this video start to get super technical and nonsensical, then don't feel bad for yourself. It barely makes sense to me, even after months of borderline obsessive research and banging my head against the wall. And between the headbanging and the price stalking, I'm starting to go mad. So, while I'll try to make this as approachable and easy to follow as I can't make any guarantees, because I'm probably just as confused as you. So, a little prior knowledge will go a long way here. I want to start with RAM. You'd think buying RAM would be as easy as buying 32 to 64 gigs of DDR5 RAM, right? Well, apparently not. DDR5 is a bit looser of a term than you'd think. There's a wide net of different DDR5 speeds and latencies you have to pay attention to. Generally, the higher the standard and the lower the CL value, the better. I'm pretty sure. Sweet spot seems to be 6000 CL30 from what I hear. But then you also have to worry about whether or not your motherboard of choice will even support your RAM kit of choice. You have to look it up on your motherboard's QVL, which is a list of RAM kits specifically tested and confirmed to work on said motherboard. And while you can try to use other RAM kits and they'll probably work, they're not guaranteed to work. So for your own peace of mind, you can't just look up best DDR5 RAM kit on Google and just get what they say. You have to figure this out for yourself. And that's mostly just how RAM is, alright? It's not designed to be confusing, it's just confusing by nature. And if you understand it, you can easily make an informed choice. The same can't really be said about storage, though, specifically NVMe SSDs. They're typically the fastest kind of storage you can get, and are meant to go into what's called an M.2 slot on a motherboard. And the fastest of the fastest right now are Gen 5 SSDs, named after the generation of M.2 slots that support them. To put it simply, they are a ripoff. While many of them tout over 10 GB sequential read-write speeds, the random read-write, which is closer to what most people would see in real life, isn't that much different from current Gen 4 SSDs, which in and of themselves aren't that much better than Gen 3 SSDs. What's the point? Even if you're going to be moving large files around constantly, I'm talking about gigabytes upon gigabytes, Gen 4 is already plenty fast enough for most everyone. Alright, you don't need Gen 5, save your money. Gen 5 PCIe lanes and M.2 slots in general have had a very hard time justifying themselves ever since they were introduced years ago, as not only are Gen 5 SSDs pointless for most everyone, but there aren't even any graphics cards that support Gen 5 PCIe yet. I'm assuming Nvidia's upcoming unannounced 5000 series cards are going to be the first out of the gate to be Gen 5 compatible, but from everything I'm hearing about them, they don't seem to be worth it. Not only are the cards allegedly more power hungry and potentially much more expensive, but the 5080 and 5070 have the same amounts of VRAM as their previous counterparts, with the 5070 still having 12 gigs of VRAM. This is a problem when it comes to future-proofing because many games are already hitting well above 12 gigs of VRAM in benchmarks, and as they become less and less optimized as time goes on, they're bound to use more. I know VRAM isn't everything and it's GDDR7 memory instead of 6X or 6, but come on, if you can fit 16 gigs of VRAM on a fucking 460 Ti, you can do it on the 5070. But allegedly they're choosing not to, making it so that you have to buy the 5080 for 16 gigs, or the 5090 if you want an improvement over the 4090. It's an upsell. And Nvidia can do this because they have an effective monopoly on the high-end GPU market, with Intel's ARC cards being completely irrelevant and AMD backing out of the high-end entirely and focusing on budget cards. Speaking of Intel and AMD, let's finally talk about the CPU market in 2024. Where do I even begin? How about with the October 2023 launch of Intel's 14th gen Raptor Lake CPUs, which were pretty much on par with 13th gen Raptor Lake CPUs, which are already not that much better than 12th gen Alder Lake. Noticing a pattern here? As 2024 rolled around, all sorts of weird rumors started going around about Raptor Lake processors becoming unstable. People were getting out of memory errors left and right, except it had nothing to do with their memory and everything to do with their i7 and i9 processors physically degrading. This eventually ballooned into a massive scandal involving near 100% failure rates, the admission that any damaged CPUs would be permanent and no refunds or recalls would be issued, a spectacular decline in stock value, tens of thousands of layoffs, and permanently shattered trust during a time when Intel desperately needs to keep their shit together so that they benefit from the US CHIPS Act. To put it simply, Intel is burning, and Arrow Lake isn't looking too good. As a result of Team Blue's implosion, suddenly AMD's 7000 series processors, also known as Zen 4, became the go-to. Compared to the disappointment of Raptor Lake, Zen 4 is a massive leap over the previous Zen 3 chips, with the X3D processors in particular being the best gaming CPUs period, with a couple of asterisks, but we'll get to that. Needless to say, they were in a great spot, and their upcoming 9000 series processors, aka Zen 5 slated to release in Q3 of this year, were expected to have yet another decent uplift over current, and with Intel tumbling down its own grave, AMD had the CPU launch in a bag. And they fumbled it. While nowhere near as catastrophic as Raptorgate, the Zen 5 launch has proven to be a convoluted disappointment of its own, with a weird focus on efficiency at the cost of any meaningful performance improvements over Zen 4, some bugs in Windows that, when fixed, would improve Zen 5 performance drastically, except that the fix also applied to Zen 4, so it wasn't really a generational improvement like it should have been. I'm skipping over a whole lot here as it's not really the point, but the takeaway is that somehow AMD managed to screw up their Zen 5 launch so bad that Zen 4, instead of going on sale and winding down like most superseded products, went up in price and started to sell out, because everybody knew Zen 5 was such a bad value. And then Intel announced their upcoming Arrow Lake CPUs on the 11th of October, only to admit they mirror Zen 5 in that they focused more on efficiency rather than any meaningful performance gains. I mean, good on them for cutting back on power draw. I mean, they absolutely needed to cut back, but Zen 5%, more like Intel 0%, or in some cases negative %. At this point, both AMD and especially Intel have been so incompetent recently that the only CPUs that matter now are these 2-year-old Zen 4 processors. Specifically, the once $360, now $500 7800X3D, which on a good day is not only the best value for gaming performance, but it's the best gaming CPU full stop, trading blows with the much more expensive 7950X3D. The only real issue with it is that it lacks productivity performance, with benchmarks putting it underneath the cheaper 7700X, which if you're just looking to game and do other basic stuff, then that doesn't matter, but for someone like me who also wants to make videos and music and games of my own, I'd probably want a little more, which is something the similarly priced on a good day 7900X provides. Except that CPU lacks the gaming performance of the 7800X 3D, and so does the even more powerful 7950X. In fact, weirdly enough, all of the non-X3D chips in Zen 4 and Zen 5 perform pretty much the exact same in gaming, a whole tier beneath X3D. So now it feels like I have to make a compromise between productivity and gaming when I'm trying to have both. Of course, if I wanted the best of both worlds, I could just go all out and get the $600 plus flagship 7950X 3D, but not only is that way too expensive for a CPU, but I'd have to deal with core parking, which is AMD's makeshift way of getting X3D gaming performance out of it, involving all sorts of special BIOS settings, power profiles, drivers, a clean Windows install, and sheer prayer. It's a headache I'm not exactly willing to deal with, so if I were to buy a CPU now, I'm stuck with either the 7800X 3D or the 7900X. And it doesn't help that along with this tough choice in CPUs, I also have to worry about the AM5 motherboards that go along with them. I could go on and on about the issues with AM5 motherboards, or really motherboards in general, namely the fact that you have to get one in order to have a 7000 or 9000 series CPU. But my biggest issue is that there's just too many of them, and most of them cost too much. From the beginning, you have multiple different chipsets: A620, B650, B650E, X670, and X670E. And if that weren't enough, AMD recently released their borderline refresh X870 and X870E chipsets, with plans to release B850 and B840 chipsets later. That's 9 total chipsets for AM5, with something like 20 different boards for each one, ranging from like $100 or $200 for quote-unquote budget boards to $1,200 for the godlike. Like, I just want a computer. I swear, out of everything to do with shopping for PC parts, motherboards are the worst. CPUs may be stagnating, and GPUs may technically be the most expensive part, at least when you're not going for the fucking godlike. But motherboards are just straight up bullshit, alright? And I hear Intel is even worse in terms of pricing and upgradability, as nearly every other generation brings with it a new platform. And how fitting is it that the part that brings everything together has the worst of everything? There are too many boards and chipsets to choose from, the newest versions aren't that much better than the previous, Gen 5 PCIe support is wonky, performance isn't really that different between boards even in different tiers, and they've grown exorbitantly expensive to the point of costing twice as much as they did 5 years ago. God, what is it with the number 5 in disappointment nowadays? Gen 5, Zen 5, AM5, Intel Core Ultra 2X5, DDR5, and if Trump wins 2025. Also 5 guys. Mid-ass fries. Not to mention, this will be the 5th computer I've ever owned. And even though I'm pretty sure eventually it'll be far from a disappointment, it's hard not to feel disappointed with the current and future landscape of PC parts. Between all the 5s, it feels like the end of Moore's Law. Like we're coming close to some quantum mechanical limit to how fast computers can be without succumbing to uncertainty. And nobody knows how to keep up the momentum without straight up jumping into quantum computing. So now they're just coming up with gimmicks to try and force evolution, like ray tracing or AI upscaling or just straight up AI regeneration, a whole bunch of bells and whistles that end up being band-aids for poor optimization in games. And it just leaves me feeling very little excitement for any PC parts at all, besides the 9800X3D. I've been waiting for this new generation of CPUs and GPUs, hoping it would be another jump in performance and the current stuff would be cheaper and all. But now that things have gone stagnant, everything's just more confusing. This whole thing feels like all these companies are working together to make PC part shopping as hostile and convoluted as possible, especially for newer shoppers who may not be familiar with the nitty-gritty, who don't have the time to do months of research. And if I hadn't bought this stupid laptop back in 2018 and instead convinced my mom to get a desktop with a 1080 Ti in it, I probably wouldn't even bother upgrading right now, because that old card is still relevant to this day. Many people call the flagship 1080 Ti the GOAT of GPUs, much like how the 7800X3D is the GOAT of gaming GPUs right now. And now I'm worried we'll never get another one again. But what do I know? I'm not an expert in PCs or PC building, I'm just a nerd who's really into computers and doesn't like where computer parts are going. Besides, computing has still come a long way from 2018. I can't really go wrong with any processor on the market, as whatever I end up with will absolutely demolish the old laptop I'm currently using. Even budget CPUs and GPUs nowadays perform nearly 3 times better than my i7-8750H and 1066GB combo. Imagine what higher end components will do. Imagine how many years I'll be able to get out of them. Alright, if I can get 6 years out of a Dell laptop with a 128GB SSD as an OS drive, imagine what I can get out of a new desktop. I'll be set for a long time. At the end of the day, I'm thinking about the future when it comes to this PC. And as much as I bashed on AMD in this video, mostly because I've been researching them more than anything else, they are the clear winner over Intel, mostly because they actually support their platforms for a long time. With their previous AM4 platform, users got a good 4 generations worth of CPUs dating back all the way to the first generation of Ryzen, with new AM4 processors still being released to this day. If AM5 has that same kind of longevity, then I'll be set.